Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be going through how to add a beautiful dreamy glow effect in Photoshop. I'm also going to show you a few little extra effects that I personally add in my photography to give it that little cinematic touch. This includes a chromatic aberration and also a multicolored grain. I use those three effects on this photo to make it look like this. And I'm going to go through exactly what I did to get there. So let's hop into Photoshop. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open your image up in Photoshop. Then we're just going to unlock the background by clicking this little padlock. This is going to mean we're able to access the actual layer. From here, you're going to duplicate your layer using Ctrl-J. Then you're going to head up to the top left where it says Select. In Select, you're going to click on Color Range. Once Color Range opens up, head over to the Select tool and pick Highlights. This means that the selection that we're about to make is only going to be affecting the highlights, which is exactly what we want for our dreamy glow effect. The fuzziness and the range are up to you, and depending on how much highlights are in your image, it will always depend on each image. I set my fuzziness usually to around 40% and my range around 200 to 230. Then select OK. Now, as you can see, it has now created masks on all the bits, like the very strong bits of highlights. From here, what we're going to do is we're then going to click Ctrl-J again. That's going to separate our selection onto another layer, meaning that we can just adjust that selection. Now, from here, make sure you have your layer 1 selected, and we're just going to right click it and then make it a smart object. This just means that if we add any sort of filter or effect onto the layer, we're going to be able to change it without having to delete the whole filter and then re-add it. We can just adjust it within the layer, so it makes it super easy. Once your selection has been converted to a smart object, we're going to head over to the top here and click on Filter. Then we're going to head up to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. This is where we're going to start to create our blur effect. We're going to be creating multiple of these to strengthen the dreaminess and the glow of the blur. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set it a really small radius, something like 5 to 10. I'm going to set mine around in the middle at 8, just because that's usually where I start my effect on. Create that, and once it's been created, you can see the smart filter has been added down here as a Gaussian blur. Make sure we have the smart object selected, and then we're going to press Ctrl-CV, which is going to duplicate that exact layer on top of it. From here, we can see that the highlights are not aligned with the image, so we're going to hold and click Ctrl-T, and it's going to ask us if we want it to be transformed. It's going to undo it being a smart filter, which is fine because it's only temporary. Click OK, and then we're just going to drag this up until it locks into place with the rest of our highlights, just like that. From here then, we can just click off to the side, and we can double click in our Gaussian blur at the bottom here, and it's going to ask us to input another setting. So here is where you can go up slightly. I'm going to put around 15, and then we're just going to repeat this process until you think you're comfortable with the glow. The next one I'm going to set as 20. The fourth layer I'm going to set as 30. I'm going to stop at 5 layers here, although you can keep going on as much as you want until you're comfortable with how it looks. And also the values that you use in your Gaussian blur in each ascending layer is totally up to you, and you can customize it to whatever you want, which is the great thing about this. Once you're here, I like to just group all my layers together just so I can see the before and after in one click. To do this, head up to your very top layer, click on it, and then go to layer 1, and whilst holding shift, select it, and I'll select all the things in between that. Then drag it down to this little folder icon on the bottom, and that's just going to allow you to group it all together. If we click the little arrow here, we can see the glow on the highlights that it's done. Now, that's the basis of the Dream Glow Edit. That's how I get my glow in my photos. Now, a few little extra things we're going to go through is some chromatic aberration. Now, a lot of time people actually try to get rid of this in photos. It sometimes happens with the RGB and your color is splitting, but we're actually going to add it into this image because I like how it looks in this. So go back to that layer 0 copy that we made at the very start of this. Make sure you have it selected, and we're going to double click it. This is going to open up your layer style panel. Once the layer style panel is open, we can see that there are 3 different color channels. We've got red, green, and blue. Now it's up to you whichever one you want to deselect or select, as each one will create different chromatic aberrations. I usually like to deselect the blue one. Once you've chosen which ones you want selected and unselected, click OK. Now, by using our arrow keys, we're going to slightly misalign our selected layer to create the chromatic aberration effect. So I usually only do about 3 to 4 clicks. And all this is going to do is give us, if I zoom in here, you can see that if I deselect it and select it, it creates this cool kind of color split. If we look on the side of the arm here, we can see the color split come into play. And I think it gives a really cool retro look. Now the very last thing we're gonna add is some grain. Grain's always good to pull together an image if you're going for that specific style. And I think it works really well with the chromatic aberration. So for the grain, you're gonna select the very bottom layer. You're gonna duplicate it again by clicking Ctrl J. It's gonna give you a copy. On the second copy of your layer 0, you're gonna head up to filter, noise, add noise. And then these are the settings I go for. I go for a distribution of uniform and monochromatic, as I think it looks the cleanest, but you can play around with them and see whichever one you think looks best for your image. With the amount, I set mine to around 15. You can go a bit higher if you want more grain in your image, or obviously if you want less, bring it down. And then just click OK. And we can now see that if we zoom in, we can see there's a nice kind of bluey grain added to our image, which is looking good. And there you go. That's how I edit my cinematic shots. All I'll do now is I'll export this and whack it on Instagram and it'll be good to go. But there you guys go. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was just a little quick tutorial from me. I had quite a few people asking me over on my Instagram how I actually achieved this look. So I thought I'd just run through a little bit of a tutorial on how I did it and a few little tips that I think are very helpful. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, keep shooting.